I never thought a fountain could change my life. But there I was, standing in front of the Trevi Fountain on a Tuesday afternoon in May, throwing a coin over my shoulder like every other tourist, making a wish I didn't really believe in. I wished for something new, something that felt like mine. I had just walked away from 25 years of marriage with a settlement check that was supposed to make me feel secure, but all I felt was empty. So I bought a plane ticket to Rome, alone. First time traveling by myself since 1998. I thought maybe if I could just breathe different air, eat different food, sleep in a different bed, I could start to feel like a person again instead of just someone's ex-wife. On my second day there, I met him. Marco. He was wearing a pilot's uniform, standing near the fountain with a coffee in his hand, looking like he belonged in a magazine. He smiled at me. Not the kind of smile men give when they want something, but the kind that makes you feel seen. He said I looked lost. I laughed and said I was exactly where I wanted to be. He asked if I wanted company for a walk through Trastevere that evening. I said yes. I didn't know that saying yes to a walk would lead me to say yes to dinners, to late-night talks on his balcony, to letting him into my hotel room, into my phone, into my bank account. I didn't know that 5 days later, I would be sitting in the American consulate with nothing left. He took everything, not just the settlement money, not just my credit cards or my sense of safety. He took the idea that I could ever trust my own judgment again. And the worst part? I let him. I handed it all over because he made me feel something I hadn't felt in decades. Wanted, special, alive. By the time I realized what was happening, he was gone. And I was stuck in a foreign country with no money, no plan, and no idea how I was going to get home. This is the story of how a perfect smile and 5 days in Rome cost me everything I thought I had left. Before we continue, please comment below with the city you're watching from. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like. My name is Jenna Thompson. I'm 52 years old, and up until 3 months ago, I was married to a man named Richard. We met in college. University of Southern California. I was studying communications. He was pre-med. We got married the summer after graduation, moved to San Diego, and built what looked like a good life. He became a pharmaceutical executive. I worked in marketing for a few years, then stayed home when our daughter was born. Emma. She's 23 now, living in Seattle, working for a tech company. She calls me every Sunday. Richard and I didn't fight much. That was the problem, I think. We just stopped talking, stopped touching, stopped looking at each other like we mattered. For the last 10 years of our marriage, we were roommates, polite ones. He had his office, I had my book club. He traveled for work, I volunteered at the botanical gardens. We had dinner parties, we went to fundraisers. Everyone thought we were fine. I thought we were fine. Until I found out he wasn't just traveling for work. Her name was Stephanie, 29 years old. Works in his company's marketing department. I found out because he left his laptop open one night. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for a recipe he said he'd emailed himself. But there it was. An entire thread of messages going back 2 years. Pictures, plans, hotel reservations in cities I thought he was visiting alone. I sat there reading everything, and I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt numb, like I was watching it happen to someone else. I confronted him the next morning. He didn't deny it. He said he was sorry. He said it didn't mean anything. He said he still loved me. But his face looked relieved, like he was glad it was finally out in the open. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten breakfast for 25 years, and he told me he wanted a divorce. I said, okay. What else was I supposed to say? The divorce took 8 months. Our lawyers handled most of it. We split everything down the middle. The house, the savings, the retirement accounts. I got a settlement of $480,000. It sounds like a lot, and it is. But it also felt like a consolation prize for wasting half my life. Richard moved out in January. He's living with Stephanie now, in a condo downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the bay. Emma told me. She didn't want to, but I asked. After he left, I stayed in our house for 2 months. Our house. I still called it that even though it was just mine now. I walked through the rooms and everything felt wrong. The couch we picked out together, the paint colors we argued about, the garden I spent years working on. It all felt like evidence of something that didn't exist anymore. My friends tried to help. They invited me to dinners, to yoga classes, to girls' weekends in Palm Springs. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't sit there and pretend I was okay while they talked about their husbands and their plans and their normal lives. Sophie was different. She's been my friend since high school. She lives in Arizona now, but we talk almost every day. She was the one who said I needed to leave. Not forever. Just for a little while. She said I needed to do something that was completely mine. Something Richard had no part of. Something that had nothing to do with San Diego or our old life or the person I used to be. She suggested a trip. Somewhere I'd always wanted to go but never had the chance. I'd always wanted to see Rome. When I was younger, I thought Richard and I would go together someday. For our anniversary, maybe. Or when we retired. But we never did. He wasn't interested in history or art or walking through old cities. He liked beach resorts and golf courses and places with good business centers. So Rome stayed on my list, a place I looked at in magazines and travel shows but never actually believed I'd visit. In March, I decided to go, just like that. I was sitting in my kitchen, drinking coffee, staring at the wall, and I opened my laptop and bought a plane ticket. One way to Rome. I'd figure out the return later. I didn't tell anyone except Sophie. I knew if I told Emma, she'd worry. If I told my other friends, they'd ask too many questions. They'd want to come with me or talk me out of it. I didn't want company. I didn't want opinions. I just wanted to go. I left on May 2nd. I packed one suitcase, new clothes, things I bought specifically for the trip because I didn't want to bring anything that reminded me of my old life. I bought a new dress, new shoes, a new jacket. I even bought new luggage. Light blue. Something I never would have chosen before. Richard always said bright colors on luggage made you a target for thieves. But Richard wasn't there anymore. So I bought the light blue suitcase and I didn't care. The flight was long. 11 hours. I sat in the middle seat in economy because I booked last minute and that was all that was left. The man next to me snored. The woman in front of me reclined her seat all the way back. I didn't sleep. I just sat there, headphones on, watching the little airplane icon move across the map on the screen, getting closer and closer to a place I'd never been. I felt scared. But I also felt something else, something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt like I was doing something that mattered, something that was just for me. I landed in Rome at 10 in the morning local time. The airport was huge and crowded, and I had no idea where I was going. I followed signs to baggage claim, then to customs, then to the taxi stand outside. The air was warm. It smelled different, like exhaust and bread and something sweet I couldn't identify. I got in a taxi and showed the driver the address of my hotel. He nodded and didn't say anything else. We drove through streets I didn't recognize, past buildings that looked older than anything I'd ever seen, and I sat in the back seat with my light blue suitcase and thought, I'm really here. I'm actually doing this. The hotel was small. Boutique, they called it, near Piazza Navona. I'd chosen it because the pictures online looked charming, and the reviews said the staff was helpful. The woman at the front desk spoke perfect English. She checked me in, gave me a map of the city, circled a few restaurants she recommended. My room was on the 3rd floor. No elevator. I dragged my suitcase up the narrow stairs and unlocked the door and stepped inside. It was tiny. A bed, a small desk, a bathroom with a shower so narrow I knew I'd hit my elbows. but the window looked out onto a little courtyard with potted lemon trees. I sat on the edge of the bed and I cried. Not sad crying. Just release. Like everything I'd been holding in for months finally had permission to come out. I slept for 3 hours. When I woke up, it was early afternoon. I was starving. I changed clothes, grabbed my purse and the map, and went outside. The streets were busy, tourists everywhere. Couples holding hands, families with strollers, groups of college kids with backpacks. I felt invisible in the best way. Nobody knew me. Nobody cared who I was or where I'd come from or what I was running from. I was just another person walking through Rome. I found a small cafe and ordered a cappuccino and a pastry. I didn't know what it was called, but it had cream inside and powdered sugar on top. I sat outside at a little table and watched people walk by. An old man with a dog. A woman on a bike with a basket full of flowers. 2 teenage boys arguing in Italian. It was normal, ordinary. But it felt magical to me because it wasn't my normal. It wasn't my ordinary. It was something completely new. That first day, I walked for hours. I didn't have a plan. I just followed the map and my feet. I saw the Pantheon. I walked through narrow alleys with laundry hanging overhead. I found a bookstore that smelled like old paper. I bought a postcard to send to Emma, but then realized I didn't know what to write. I stood there in the shop, holding the postcard, and put it back. I'd call her later. By evening, I was exhausted. My feet hurt. My shoulders ached from carrying my purse all day. But I felt good. I felt like I'd accomplished something just by existing in a new place. I went back to the hotel, took a shower, and lay down on the bed. I thought about calling Sophie, telling her I'd made it, that I was okay. But I didn't. I just closed my eyes and fell asleep with the window open and the sound of people talking in Italian drifting up from the courtyard below. The next day was when everything changed. I woke up early, had breakfast at the hotel, coffee and bread with jam, and decided to see the Trevi Fountain. Everyone said you had to see it, that it was one of those things you couldn't miss. So I walked there. It took about 15 minutes. The streets were already crowded even though it was only 9 in the morning. When I turned the corner and saw the fountain for the first time, I stopped. It was bigger than I expected, more grand. The water was so blue it didn't look real. I stood there for a while just watching. Tourists throwing coins, people taking selfies, a street artist painting on the sidewalk. I felt anonymous again, safe in the crowd. I reached into my purse, found a coin, and walked closer. I turned my back to the fountain like you're supposed to. Closed my eyes, made a wish. Something new. That's all I asked for. Something that felt like mine. I threw the coin over my shoulder and heard it splash into the water. When I opened my eyes and turned around, he was standing there. Marco. Watching me. Smiling. He was wearing a pilot's uniform. Dark blue, crisp, with silver wings pinned to his chest. He had a coffee cup in one hand and sunglasses pushed up on his head. He looked like he'd just stepped out of a commercial. Tall, maybe 6 feet. Dark hair with a little gray at the temples. Clean shaven. Good smile. The kind of smile that reaches the eyes. He said something in Italian first. I shook my head and said I didn't speak Italian. He switched to English immediately. No accent. Well, a slight one. But his English was perfect. He said I looked like I was making a serious wish. I laughed and said it wasn't that serious. He asked if it was my first time in Rome. I said yes. He said he could tell. I asked how. He said I had that look, like everything was new. He told me his name was Marco Bellini. He said he was a pilot for a European airline, based in Rome but flew all over. Milan, Paris, London, Frankfurt. He said he had 3 days off and was just walking around, enjoying the city like a tourist, even though he lived here. He asked my name. I told him. Jenna. He repeated it. Said it was a beautiful name. I felt my face get warm. We talked for maybe 10 minutes, right there by the fountain. He asked where I was staying. I told him near Piazza Navona. He said that was a great area. Lots of good restaurants. He asked if I had plans for the evening. I said no. He said he knew a place in Trastevere, a little neighborhood across the river. Quiet, not too touristy. He said if I wanted, he could show me around. I hesitated. I didn't know this man. I didn't know anything about him except his name and that he was wearing a uniform. But something in me said yes. Maybe it was the uniform. Maybe it was the smile. Maybe it was just that I wanted to feel like someone interesting enough to be asked. So I said, okay. He said he'd meet me at 7, outside my hotel. He asked for the address. I gave it to him. He typed it into his phone. Then he checked his watch and said he had to go, meeting a friend for lunch. He touched my arm lightly. Just a brush of his fingers on my sleeve. He said he was looking forward to it. Then he walked away. I stood there watching him disappear into the crowd. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Anticipation. I spent the rest of the day second-guessing myself. I walked back to the hotel, changed clothes 3 times, put on makeup, took it off, put it on again. I texted Sophie, told her I'd met someone. She wrote back immediately. Who? Where? Is he safe? I told her he was a pilot, that we were just going for a walk. She said to keep my phone on, to stay in public places, to trust my gut. I promised I would. At 7, I went downstairs. He was already there, standing outside the hotel entrance. He'd changed out of his uniform. Now he was wearing jeans, a white button-down shirt, and a navy jacket. He looked relaxed, normal. He smiled when he saw me, said I looked lovely. We started walking. He led the way. We crossed a bridge over the Tiber River. The water was dark and smooth. Lights from the buildings reflected on the surface. He pointed out landmarks as we walked. Told me little stories about the history. Nothing too detailed, just enough to make it interesting. He was a good talker, easy to listen to. Trastevere was different from the area around my hotel. Narrower streets, fewer tourists, more locals. We walked past small shops and cafes with tables spilling onto the sidewalks. He took me to a restaurant. Tiny place, maybe 8 tables. The owner greeted Marco like they knew each other. They spoke in Italian for a moment. Marco laughed at something the man said. Then we sat down at a table in the corner. The menu was in Italian. Marco ordered for both of us. He said to trust him. I did. The food was incredible. Pasta with something I couldn't identify but tasted like butter and cheese and heaven. Wine that was light and cold. Bread that was still warm. We talked the whole time. He asked about me, where I was from, what I did, why I was in Rome. I told him the basics. San Diego. Recently divorced. Needed a change of scenery. I didn't tell him about Richard or Stephanie or the settlement money. I just said it was my first solo trip. He listened like he actually cared. He asked follow-up questions. He remembered details. When I mentioned my daughter, he asked her name, her age, what she did for work. It felt good to be listened to. He told me about his life. He said he'd been a pilot for 12 years. Loved it, but it was lonely. Always moving. Never really home. He said his marriage had ended 5 years ago. No kids. He said his ex-wife couldn't handle the schedule, the time apart. He said he understood, but it still hurt. He said he'd dated since then, but nothing serious. Everyone wanted something he couldn't give. Stability. Routine. A partner who was actually around. I said I understood. He reached across the table and touched my hand. Just for a second. He said it was nice to talk to someone who got it. After dinner, we walked some more, through narrow streets with cobblestones that made me glad I was wearing flats. He showed me a small square with a fountain in the center. He said it was one of his favorite spots. Quiet. Away from the crowds. We sat on the edge of the fountain. He asked if I was having a good time. I said yes. I meant it. He said he was too. He said it had been a long time since he'd enjoyed just talking to someone. I believed him. He walked me back to my hotel around 10. We stood outside the entrance. He said he'd love to see me again. Maybe tomorrow. I said I'd like that. He asked for my number. I gave it to him. He typed it into his phone. Then he kissed me on the cheek. Light. Barely there. He said goodnight and walked away. I went upstairs to my room and sat on the bed and felt like a teenager. It was ridiculous. I knew it was ridiculous. But I didn't care. The next morning, he texted me. Good morning. Hope you slept well. I have a free day. Would you like to spend it with me? I wrote back yes before I could overthink it. He picked me up at 10. We spent the entire day together. He took me to the Coliseum. We didn't go inside. He said the lines were too long and it was better to just see it from the outside anyway. We had lunch at a place near the Roman Forum. He paid. I offered to split it, but he waved me off, said it was his city, his treat. We walked through a park. He bought gelato from a street vendor, pistachio for him, lemon for me. We sat on a bench and watched people pass by. He told me stories about his flights, funny passengers, weird delays, close calls with turbulence. I laughed more than I had in months. That evening, he invited me to his apartment. He said he wanted to cook for me. I hesitated. Sophie's voice was in my head. Stay in public. Trust your gut. But my gut said I wanted to go. So I did. His place was in a residential neighborhood, 4th floor walk-up. The apartment was small, but nice, clean, organized, big windows that let in lots of light. He had a balcony, just big enough for 2 chairs and a little table. He said he spent most of his free time out there. He made pasta, from scratch. I sat at the kitchen counter and watched him work. He moved around the kitchen like he knew what he was doing. We drank wine. We talked. We laughed. After dinner, we sat on the balcony. The city lights stretched out below us. He put his hand on mine. I didn't pull away. He kissed me that night. Really kissed me. I hadn't been kissed like that in years. Maybe ever. It felt like something out of a movie. Like something that happened to other people. Not to 52-year-old divorcees from San Diego. But it was happening to me. And I let it. I stayed over. I told myself it was because it was late. Because I didn't want to navigate the streets alone. But that wasn't really why. I stayed because I wanted to. Because for the first time since Richard left, I felt wanted, desired, seen. Marco made me feel like I mattered, like I was special. He said things no one had said to me in decades. He said I was beautiful, that I was interesting, that he couldn't believe I was single. It should have sounded like a line, but it didn't. It sounded sincere. The next 2 days were a blur. We were together almost constantly. He said he'd pushed back his next flight, that he wanted to spend more time with me. We had breakfast together. He made coffee in his little kitchen. We walked through neighborhoods I never would have found on my own. We had dinner at his apartment again. He introduced me to his neighbor, an older woman named Lucia who spoke no English but smiled at me like she approved. Everything felt right, easy, natural, like we'd known each other for months instead of days. On the 4th night, things changed. We were at his apartment, having wine on the balcony. He got quiet. I asked if something was wrong. He said he'd gotten a message from his bank. There was a problem with his account. Something about a delayed payment from the airline. He said it happened sometimes, administrative errors, but it meant his cards were temporarily frozen. He said he had a flight to London in 2 days. He needed to cover his hotel there, his expenses. He said he'd tried calling the bank, but they said it would take a week to sort out. He looked embarrassed, frustrated. He said he hated asking, but he wondered if I could help, just temporarily. He'd pay me back as soon as his account was unlocked. He said it was about €3,000, maybe $4,000. I should have said no. I should have asked questions. I should have called Sophie, but I didn't. I looked at him sitting there. This man who'd made me feel alive again, who'd listened to me, who'd made me laugh, who'd kissed me like I mattered. And I wanted to help. I wanted to be the person he could count on, so I said yes. He said he'd go to the bank with me in the morning. We could do a wire transfer. He gave me his account information, wrote it down on a piece of paper. He kissed me, thanked me, said I was saving him, said he didn't know what he'd do without me. We went to bed. I fell asleep thinking I was doing something good, something kind, something that would bring us closer. The next morning, we went to a bank near his apartment. He waited outside, said he had a call to make. I went in alone. The teller spoke some English. I explained what I needed. She processed the transfer, $4,000 from my account to the account number Marco had given me. It took 15 minutes. When I came out, Marco was still on the phone. He saw me, smiled, ended the call, asked if everything went okay. I said yes. He hugged me, said I was an angel, said he'd have the money back to me within a week. We got coffee, we walked around. Everything seemed normal. But that afternoon, I checked my bank account on my phone, just to see the transaction go through. And that's when I saw it. Not one transfer, 7. All within the last 3 days. All to different accounts. All for amounts between $2,000 and $8,000. My stomach dropped. The total was over $30,000. I hadn't authorized any of those, only the one from this morning. I called my bank immediately. U.S. number, international rates. I didn't care. The representative said the transfers had all been initiated using my login credentials. From my phone. She asked if I'd given anyone access to my phone. I said no. But then I remembered. Marco borrowing my phone 2 nights ago. Said his was dead. Said he needed to check something quickly. I'd unlocked it and handed it to him. I didn't think anything of it. He'd only had it for a few minutes. I felt cold. I looked at Marco. He was walking next to me, smiling, talking about where we should have lunch. I stopped. I asked him if he'd used my phone for anything besides what he said. He looked confused, asked what I meant. I told him about the transfers. His face changed, just for a second. Then he looked concerned. He said that was crazy, that he had no idea how that happened, that maybe my phone was hacked, that we should go to the police. But his voice sounded different, flatter, less warm. I said I needed to go back to my hotel. He said he'd come with me. I said no. I needed to be alone. He tried to argue. I walked away. I heard him call my name. I didn't turn around. I just kept walking. I walked fast. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to get away from him. My hands were shaking. I pulled out my phone and tried to call my bank again, but the call wouldn't connect. I tried 3 times. Nothing. I stopped on a corner and leaned against a building. My heart was pounding. I opened my banking app, refreshed it. The balance was worse than I thought. $43,000 gone. Almost half of what I'd brought with me. Almost half of my settlement. Money I was supposed to live on. Money I needed. And it was just gone. I tried to think. Tried to make sense of it. Marco had seemed so real, so genuine. The uniform, the apartment, the neighbor who smiled at me, the restaurant owner who knew his name. How could all of that be fake? But the numbers on my screen didn't lie. Someone had accessed my account. Someone had made those transfers. And the only person who'd had my phone was him. I started walking again, back toward my hotel. It took me 20 minutes. I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see Marco following me. But he wasn't there. When I got to the hotel, I went straight to my room, locked the door, put the chain on. I sat on the bed and called Sophie. She answered on the second ring. I told her everything, the whole story. Meeting Marco. The dinners. Staying at his place. The bank problem. The transfer I made this morning. The other transfers I didn't make. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said one word. Scam. She said, I needed to go to the police. Report it immediately. I said I didn't know where the police station was. I didn't speak Italian. I didn't have proof of anything except money missing from my account. She said it didn't matter. I had to try. She said she'd look up the address of the nearest station and text it to me. She said to go now, not to wait. I said okay, but I sat there on the bed for another 10 minutes, just staring at the wall, trying to process what was happening, trying to accept that I'd been played, that everything Marco had said and done was a lie designed to get my money. My phone buzzed, a text from Marco. Jenna, please talk to me. I don't know what's happening, but we can figure this out together. I'm worried about you. I didn't respond. Another text came through a minute later. This one from Sophie. Address of the police station. She said it was a 15-minute walk from my hotel. She said to bring my phone, my passport, any documentation I had. I grabbed my purse and left. The police station was in an older building, stone steps leading up to a heavy wooden door. Inside, it smelled like coffee and old paperwork. There was a desk near the entrance. A uniformed officer sitting behind it. He looked up when I walked in. I said I needed to report a crime. He said something in Italian. I said I only spoke English. He sighed, gestured for me to wait. He picked up a phone and made a call, spoke rapidly in Italian, hung up, told me someone would be with me shortly. I sat on a bench near the door, waited. My phone kept buzzing. More texts from Marco. Jenna, where are you? Are you okay? Please let me know you're safe. I turned my phone to silent, put it in my purse. 15 minutes passed. Then a woman came out, mid-40s, short hair, tired eyes. She introduced herself as Officer Gabrielli. She spoke English with a heavy accent, but I could understand her. She asked what happened. I told her the whole story. She took notes, asked for Marco's full name, his address, his phone number. I gave her everything I had. She asked if I had proof of the transfers. I showed her my banking app. She looked at it, nodded, wrote more notes. She asked if I'd given Marco my banking information. I said no, only my phone, and only for a few minutes. She asked if I had his account information, the one I'd transferred money to this morning. I still had the piece of paper he'd given me. I handed it to her. She looked at it, made a copy. She said she'd look into it. But she also said this kind of thing was difficult. Tourists falling for scams. Romance scams especially. She said Marco probably wasn't his real name. The address I gave probably wasn't his real apartment. The account number was probably connected to someone else. She said they'd investigate. But she didn't sound hopeful. I asked what I should do. She said to contact my bank. Freeze my accounts, change all my passwords, file a formal complaint with them. She said to keep all documentation, every text, every email, every transaction record. She gave me a case number, said I could use it when I contacted my bank. She said if they found anything, they'd let me know. But her tone made it clear she didn't expect to find anything. I thanked her and left. I walked back to my hotel in a daze. Everything looked different now. The beautiful streets, the charming cafes, the couples holding hands. It all felt like a set, like I was walking through a movie designed to trick me. I got back to my room, locked the door again, called my bank, spent an hour on the phone with 3 different people. They froze my accounts, started an investigation into the unauthorized transfers, said it could take 30 to 90 days to resolve, maybe longer because the transfers went to foreign accounts. They asked if I'd given anyone access to my phone. I said yes. They said that would complicate things. that it might be considered authorized access. I felt sick. After I hung up, I checked my phone. 10 missed calls from Marco, 15 texts. The last one said, "I'm coming to your hotel. We need to talk." I panicked. I didn't want to see him. I didn't want him anywhere near me. I called the front desk, asked if they could tell me if anyone had asked for me. The woman said no one had, but she said she'd make a note, that if anyone came asking for Jenna Thompson, they'd be turned away. I thanked her, but I didn't feel safe. I tried to think about what to do next. I couldn't stay in Rome. Not now. But I also couldn't leave. My accounts were frozen. I had maybe 200 euros in cash. My credit cards were locked. I couldn't book a flight, couldn't pay for a hotel. I was stuck. I called Sophie again, told her what the police said, what the bank said. She said she'd wire me money, through Western Union, something I could pick up in cash, enough to get a flight home and cover a few days of expenses. I told her she didn't have to do that. She said she was doing it anyway. She said she'd send the details within the hour. I sat on the bed and cried. Not quiet crying. Loud, ugly crying. The kind where you can't breathe, where your whole body shakes. I cried for being so stupid, for trusting someone I barely knew, for believing that a man like Marco could actually be interested in someone like me, for thinking that 5 days of attention meant something real. I cried for the money, for the settlement I'd fought so hard for the security I thought I had, for the future I thought I was building. And I cried because I felt so alone. In a foreign country. In a hotel room that suddenly felt like a trap, with no one to help me except a friend a continent away. My phone buzzed again. I grabbed it thinking it was Sophie. But it was Marco. This time it wasn't a text. It was a voice message. I almost deleted it. But something made me listen. His voice sounded different. Colder. He said, "Jenna, I don't know what you think happened, but you're making a big mistake. You're going to regret this. We had something good. You're throwing it away over a misunderstanding. Call me. Let's talk like adults." The message ended. I listened to it again. The way he said, "You're going to regret this." It didn't sound like concern. It sounded like a threat. I forwarded the message to Officer Gabrielli's email, the one she'd given me at the station. Then I blocked Marco's number, blocked him on WhatsApp, deleted every text we'd exchanged. I wanted him gone, erased, like he'd never existed. But I couldn't erase the damage, the missing money, the fear, the shame. Sophie texted me an hour later. Money was ready. She'd sent $2,000. I could pick it up at a Western Union location a few blocks from my hotel. She sent me the address, the confirmation number. I waited until morning to go. I didn't want to be outside after dark. I didn't want to risk running into Marco, or whoever he really was. That night, I barely slept. Every sound in the hallway made me jump. Every notification on my phone made my heart race, even though I'd blocked his number. I kept thinking about his apartment, the balcony, the neighbor, Lucia. Was she part of it? Was she an actress? Or just someone who lived there and had no idea what Marco was doing? I thought about the restaurant owner who greeted him. Was that staged too? How many people were involved? Or was Marco just that good at creating an illusion? Around 3 in the morning, I got up and started packing. I didn't have a flight yet, but I needed to be ready to leave. I folded my clothes, the new dress I'd bought for this trip, the jacket, the shoes. Everything felt tainted now, like evidence of my own stupidity. I thought about throwing it all away, leaving it in the room, but I didn't. I packed it all neatly into my light blue suitcase and zipped it closed. At 8, I went downstairs. The woman at the front desk was different from the one I'd spoken to yesterday. I asked if anyone had come looking for me. She checked her notes, said no. I felt a small wave of relief. I asked her to call me a taxi. She did. I gave her the address of the Western Union. The driver didn't speak English. I showed him the address on my phone. He nodded. We drove through morning traffic. The city looked beautiful. Golden light on old buildings. People walking to work with coffee cups and newspapers. Normal life happening all around me. But I felt completely separate from it. Like I was watching through glass. The Western Union was in a small shop that also sold phone cards and tourist souvenirs. I gave them my ID and the confirmation number Sophie sent. The clerk processed it without speaking. Handed me $2,000 in cash. I signed the receipt. Put the money in my purse. Left. I felt paranoid walking back to the hotel. Like everyone on the street was watching me. Like Marco could appear at any moment. I walked fast, kept my head down. Made it back to my room without incident. I used the hotel computer in the lobby to book a flight. The next available one to the US was tomorrow afternoon. Through Frankfurt, then to Los Angeles. Then a connection to San Diego. It would take almost 24 hours. I didn't care. I booked it. Used the cash Sophie sent to pay the hotel bill through the end of my stay. I had about $800 left. Enough for food and a taxi to the airport. Enough to survive until I got home. I spent the rest of that day in my room. I ordered room service for lunch. Didn't leave except to get ice from the machine down the hall. I kept checking my email, looking for updates from the bank, from the police. Nothing. I knew there probably wouldn't be. But I kept checking anyway. My phone stayed silent. No calls, no texts. Marco was gone. Or at least he was pretending to be. But I didn't trust it. I didn't trust anything anymore. That night, I heard footsteps in the hallway. They stopped outside my door. I held my breath. Waited. A shadow appeared under the door. Someone standing there. I didn't move. Didn't make a sound. After a moment, the shadow disappeared. The footsteps continued down the hall. It was probably just another guest. Someone looking for their room. But my heart didn't stop racing for an hour. I didn't sleep that night either. I sat on the bed with the lights on, my suitcase by the door, ready to leave, counting down the hours until my flight, wondering how I'd gotten here, how 5 days had destroyed everything I thought I was building, how a smile and a uniform and a few kind words had been enough to make me hand over my future. The next morning, I woke up at 5. I hadn't really slept. Just closed my eyes for short periods and then snapped awake at every sound. I got up, took a shower, got dressed. I wanted to leave for the airport early, earlier than necessary. I just wanted to be out of this hotel, out of this city, out of this country where everything had gone so wrong. I went downstairs at 6:30. The lobby was empty except for a young guy behind the desk. Different person again. I asked him to call me a taxi to the airport. He said it would be about 20 minutes. I said that was fine. I sat in a chair near the window, watched the street. It was still dark outside. A few people walking by. A street sweeper. A delivery truck. Normal morning in Rome. But nothing felt normal to me. My phone buzzed. I pulled it out. Email from my bank. I opened it. They'd completed their initial review of the unauthorized transfers. They were able to reverse 2 of them. The recipients hadn't withdrawn the funds yet. Total recovered, $9,000. Better than nothing. But still $34,000 gone. The email said they'd continue investigating the other transactions, but it could take months, and there was no guarantee. I closed the email, put my phone away. At least it was something. The taxi arrived. The driver helped me with my suitcase. We drove through the early morning streets, past the Coliseum, past the Forum, past all the places Marco had shown me. I looked at them through the window and felt nothing. No sadness, no nostalgia. Just numbness. We got to the airport in 40 minutes. I paid the driver, took my suitcase inside. The airport was busy. People everywhere. Families, business travelers, tourists starting their trips. I checked in at a kiosk, printed my boarding pass, went through security. The line was long. I stood there with my carry-on and my purse, waiting, moving forward slowly. I kept looking around, scanning faces. Part of me still thought I might see Marco, that he'd show up, try to talk to me, try to convince me it was all a misunderstanding. But he didn't. He was gone. Or he'd never been real to begin with. I made it through security, found my gate, sat down in a hard plastic chair. My flight didn't board for another 2 hours. I bought a coffee from a stand nearby. It was terrible, bitter and weak. But I drank it anyway. I needed something to do, something to focus on besides the knot in my stomach. I checked my phone. Sophie had texted, asking if I was at the airport, if I was okay. I wrote back, at the gate, waiting to board. "I'm okay," she responded immediately. "Good. Call me when you land in LA." "I will." She sent a heart emoji. I put my phone away. I sat there watching people, a couple arguing in German, a family with 3 kids running around while the parents looked exhausted, a business guy on his laptop typing fast, everyone living their normal lives. No idea that the woman sitting 10 feet away had just lost everything. No idea that I was running, that I was broken, that I was barely holding it together. An hour passed, then another. Finally, they called my boarding group. I stood up, got in line, handed my boarding pass to the gate agent. She scanned it, smiled, said something in Italian I didn't understand. I walked down the jetway, found my seat, middle row, middle seat. I put my carry-on in the overhead bin, sat down, buckled my seatbelt. The plane filled up around me. A man sat next to me. Older. He nodded. I nodded back. Didn't say anything. I didn't want to talk. I just wanted to disappear. The plane pushed back from the gate, taxied to the runway. I looked out the window. Rome getting smaller, buildings and streets and history I'd never see again. I felt nothing. The plane took off, climbed into the gray morning sky. I closed my eyes. Tried to sleep. Couldn't. My mind kept replaying everything. Meeting Marco at the fountain. The dinners. The wine. His apartment. The balcony. His hands on mine. His voice saying I was special. Beautiful. Worth his time. All lies. All calculated. All designed to make me trust him. To make me vulnerable. And it worked. The flight to Frankfurt was 2 hours. I didn't eat. Didn't watch a movie. Just sat there staring at the seat in front of me. When we landed, I had a 3-hour layover. I found my next gate. Sat down. Checked my email again. Nothing new from the bank. Nothing from the police. I didn't expect anything. But I kept checking anyway. I tried to eat something. Bought a sandwich from a shop near the gate. Took 2 bites. Couldn't finish it. My stomach felt like it was full of rocks. I threw the sandwich away, sat back down, waited. Time moved slowly. Every minute felt like 10. I just wanted to be home, in my own house, in my own bed, away from all of this. Finally, they called my flight to LA. I boarded, another middle seat, this time next to a woman with a baby. The baby cried for the first hour. I didn't mind. The noise gave me something to focus on besides my own thoughts. The flight was 11 hours. I slept for maybe 2 of them. The rest of the time, I just sat there. The woman next to me tried to make conversation, asked where I was coming from. I said Rome. She said that sounded wonderful. I said it was. I didn't elaborate. She stopped asking questions. We landed in LA around 6 in the evening local time. I'd lost a day to time zones. It was already tomorrow. I went through customs. The officer looked at my passport, asked how long I'd been gone. I said a week. He stamped it, told me to have a nice day. I walked through baggage claim, found my suitcase on the carousel. Light blue, still intact, still mine. I grabbed it and headed to the domestic terminal. My connection to San Diego was in 2 hours. I found a quiet corner, sat on the floor with my back against the wall, called Sophie. She answered immediately. "Where are you?" I said LA. Waiting for my last flight. She asked how I was doing. I said I didn't know. She said that was okay. She said she'd pick me up at the airport in San Diego. I said she didn't have to. She said she wanted to. I said okay. Thank you. She said she loved me. I said I loved her too. We hung up. I sat there on the floor of LAX, people walking past me, pulling suitcases, talking on phones, living their lives. I felt invisible. I felt like I'd been erased. Like the last week had taken everything that made me feel like a person and left me hollow. I thought about Richard, about the divorce, about how I'd thought that was the worst thing that could happen to me. But this was worse, because I'd done this to myself. I'd made the choice to trust Marco, to give him access to my phone, to transfer money to his account. Richard had hurt me, but I'd hurt myself. My flight boarded. I got on. Last row. Window seat this time. I pressed my face against the cold plastic and watched the ground disappear below me. 45 minutes later, we landed in San Diego. I grabbed my suitcase, walked out to arrivals. Sophie was there, standing by the curb. When she saw me, her face changed. She looked like she might cry. She walked over, hugged me, didn't say anything, just held on. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I was too tired, too empty. She drove me home, to my house, the one I used to share with Richard. She came inside with me, turned on lights, made tea, sat with me in the kitchen. She asked if I wanted to talk. I said not yet. She said that was okay. She stayed for another hour. Then she said she'd come back tomorrow. Check on me, bring groceries. I said she didn't have to. She said she was doing it anyway. She hugged me again, left. I locked the door behind her, walked through the house. Everything was exactly how I'd left it. But it felt different. I felt different. I went upstairs, took another shower, got into bed, stared at the ceiling. My phone was on the nightstand. I picked it up, checked my email one more time. Still nothing. I put it down, closed my eyes, and finally, I slept. The next few days were a blur. Sophie came by every morning, brought food, sat with me, didn't ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. I called my bank every day, got the same updates, investigation ongoing, some funds recovered, most still gone. They said I might not get it all back, probably wouldn't. I knew that already, but hearing it made it real. I didn't tell anyone else, not Emma, not my other friends, not my family. I couldn't. I couldn't stand the idea of them knowing how stupid I'd been, how easily I'd been fooled, how desperate I must have seemed to fall for someone after 5 days. So I kept it to myself. Told Emma the trip was fine when she called. Said Rome was beautiful, said I had a good time. She believed me. Why wouldn't she? A week after I got back, I got an email from Officer Gabrielli in Rome. She said they'd investigated the address I gave them. It was an Airbnb, rented under a fake name with a prepaid card. The owner had never met the person who rented it, only communicated through the app. The account number Marco gave me was connected to a shell account in Cyprus. Untraceable. They couldn't pursue it further. She said she was sorry. She said this happened more often than people realized. She said I wasn't the first. I wouldn't be the last. She wished me luck. I read the email 3 times. Then I deleted it. There was nothing else to do. Marco was gone. The money was gone. The investigation was over. It was just me now, alone in my house, with a dwindling bank account and a story I couldn't tell anyone. But something started to shift. Slowly. I stopped checking my email every hour, stopped replaying every conversation with Marco in my head, stopped blaming myself quite so much. I was still angry, still hurt, still ashamed. But I was also starting to feel something else. Determination. I'd survived a bad marriage, a painful divorce, a devastating scam. I was still here, still standing, and I wasn't going to let this destroy me. 2 weeks after I got home, I opened my laptop, started typing. I wrote down everything that happened. Meeting Marco, the transfers, the police station, the flight home, all of it. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I needed to get it out, needed to see it on the page, needed to own what happened instead of hiding from it. I kept writing, every day for 2 weeks. I wrote about the shame, the anger, the way I felt when I realized what Marco had done, the way I felt sitting in that hotel room knowing I'd been played, the way I felt walking through the airport wanting to disappear. I wrote it all down, no filter, no poetry, just the truth, raw and ugly and real. Sophie came over one afternoon while I was writing. She asked what I was working on. I told her. She asked if she could read it. I hesitated, but then I said yes. She sat at my kitchen table and read the whole thing. 15 pages. When she finished, she looked at me. She said it was powerful. She said other women needed to read this. I said no one wanted to hear about how stupid I'd been. She said it wasn't about being stupid. It was about being human, about wanting connection, about trusting the wrong person. She said that happened to people every day, in every country, in every city. She said my story could help someone else avoid the same mistake. I thought about it for a few days. Then I started researching. I found forums online, women who'd been scammed the same way, different cities, different men, same story, charming guy, quick romance, money gone. Some lost more than me, some lost less, but the pattern was identical. And most of them never told anyone. They carried the shame alone, just like I was doing. I decided to share my story. I created a blog. Simple design, nothing fancy, just a white page with black text. I titled it What Happened to Me in Rome. I posted the whole thing, every detail. I didn't use Marco's name. I called him M, but I described everything else. The uniform, the apartment, the wire transfer, the voice message, the police station, all of it. I shared the link in one of the forums. Within a day, I had 50 comments. Women thanking me, saying they'd experienced something similar, saying they'd never told anyone, saying they felt less alone reading my story. One woman said she'd been planning a trip to Paris. She'd met someone online who said he was a doctor. He wanted to meet her there. After reading my story, she canceled the trip. She said I might have saved her life savings. More women started sharing their stories in the comments. A teacher from Ohio who lost $60,000 to a supposed businessman in London. A nurse from Texas who wired money to a man claiming to be an engineer in Dubai. A retired accountant from Florida who met someone on a cruise and ended up losing her pension. Different details. Same devastation. And all of them had kept it secret. All of them had blamed themselves. All of them had thought they were the only ones stupid enough to fall for it. I kept writing. I posted updates. What I learned about romance scams. Red flags to watch for. How these men operated. The psychology behind it. I talked to a fraud investigator who specialized in international scams. She told me these operations were often run by organized groups. Multiple people working together. The handsome pilot. The friendly neighbor. The restaurant owner who knew his name. All part of the setup. All designed to make the lie feel real. She said they targeted women who were vulnerable, recently divorced, widowed, lonely, women with access to money and a need for validation, women like me. That information should have made me feel worse, should have confirmed that I was just a mark, an easy target. But it didn't. It made me angry, not at myself, at them, at the people who did this for a living, who destroyed lives and didn't care, who saw human connection as nothing more than a tool for theft. My anger became fuel. I used it to keep writing, keep sharing, keep warning other women. 3 months after I got back from Rome, my bank sent a final report. They'd recovered a total of $14,000. The rest was gone. Permanently. They closed the case. I'd lost $29,000, more than half of what I'd taken to Rome. Money I'd earned through 25 years of marriage. Money I was supposed to use to rebuild my life. Gone because I'd trusted a man I met at a fountain. I could have spiraled, could have let it destroy me. But I didn't. Instead, I took the $14,000 they recovered and I did something with it. I hired a web developer. Someone who could make my blog look professional, make it easier to find, easier to share. I added resources, links to fraud reporting sites, contact information for international consumer protection agencies, a guide on what to do if you've been scammed, how to report it, how to protect yourself, how to move forward. The blog grew. I started getting emails, hundreds of them, women asking for advice, sharing their stories, thanking me for speaking up. Some of them had been scammed years ago and never told anyone. Reading my story gave them permission to finally talk about it, to stop carrying the shame alone. A few men reached out too, said they'd experienced the same thing. Different tactics, same outcome. The scammers weren't picky. They targeted anyone who seemed vulnerable and had money to lose. I was contacted by a journalist. She worked for a major newspaper. She wanted to write an article about romance scams targeting divorced women. She asked if she could interview me. I said yes. The article came out 2 months later. She used my real name. My real story. It went viral. Suddenly, I was getting interview requests from podcasts, morning shows, online publications. Everyone wanted to talk about what happened to me in Rome. I said yes to most of them. Not because I wanted attention, but because every time I told my story, someone reached out to say it helped them. That they'd been about to send money to someone they met online. That they'd recognized the red flags I described. That I'd saved them from making the same mistake. Each message reminded me that my pain had purpose. That losing $29,000 wasn't just a personal tragedy. It was a lesson I could share. A warning I could give. A way to protect other women from the same devastation. My daughter found out about the blog 6 months after I started it. She called me crying. Said she couldn't believe I'd gone through all that alone. Said she wished I'd told her. I explained why I hadn't. The shame, the embarrassment, the fear of being judged. She said she understood, but she also said she was proud of me, for turning something horrible into something helpful, for using my voice, for refusing to stay silent. That conversation healed something between us, something I didn't even know was broken. I never got the rest of my money back. The investigation in Rome went nowhere. Marco disappeared completely, no trace, no leads, nothing. I assumed Marco wasn't even his real name. The whole identity was probably fabricated. The uniform, the apartment, the charming pilot from Rome who made me feel special. All of it was theater. A performance designed to extract maximum profit from minimum effort. And it worked. On me and probably dozens of other women before and after me. But I did get something back. Not money. Something different. I got my voice. For 25 years, I'd been Richard's wife. Then I was Richard's ex-wife. Then I was the woman who got scammed in Rome. But now I was something else. I was someone who survived. Who spoke up. Who refused to let shame silence her. I was someone who turned her worst mistake into a tool to help others. That felt like power. Real power. Not the kind that comes from money or status. The kind that comes from choosing not to be a victim. A year after Rome, I sold my house, the one I'd shared with Richard. I couldn't live there anymore. Too many memories, too much history. I bought a smaller place, a condo near the beach. Used some of what was left of my settlement for the down payment. The rest I put in a high-yield savings account. Untouchable. Safe. I got a part-time job at a nonprofit that helped fraud victims. I used my experience, my story, my knowledge. I helped other people navigate the aftermath of being scammed, helped them file reports, contact banks, find resources, rebuild. My blog is still active. I post regularly, share new stories, warn about new tactics. The scammers evolve. They adapt. They find new ways to exploit trust. But so do we. The community I built. The women who share their stories. The men who speak up. We adapt too. We learn. We protect each other. We refuse to be silent. I'm not the same person who threw a coin into the Trevi Fountain and wished for something new. That woman was lost, searching, desperate for validation. I'm not desperate anymore. I'm not searching. I know who I am now. I'm a survivor, a truth teller, a warning sign for others. And sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I think about Marco, whoever he really is, wherever he is now. I wonder if he thinks about me, if he remembers my face, my name. Probably not. I was just another job, another payday, another woman too lonely to see the trap until it closed. But I remember him. I remember every detail. And I use those details to protect other women. That's my revenge. Not getting my money back, not seeing him punished. My revenge is making sure his tactics don't work as well the next time. Making sure women know what to look for, how to protect themselves, how to trust their instincts when something feels wrong. That's the power I have now, and no one can take it away. 2 years have passed since Rome. My life looks different now. I'm still in San Diego, still in the condo near the beach, still working at the nonprofit, still running the blog. But I'm different. Stronger, clearer, more careful, but also more open. It sounds contradictory, but it's true. I learned that being careful doesn't mean closing yourself off. It means paying attention, trusting your instincts, asking questions, not ignoring red flags just because you want something to be real. I've traveled since then, not to Rome. I don't think I'll ever go back there. But I've been to other places. Portugal, Ireland, Iceland. Always alone. Always on my terms. And yes, I've met people. I've had conversations with strangers. I've had coffee with men who seemed interesting. But now I know the difference between genuine interest and performance. I know what manipulation looks like. I can spot it in the first 5 minutes. The too perfect story, the quick intimacy, the subtle requests, the emotional hooks designed to make you feel special. I see it all now, and I walk away. The blog has become something bigger than I expected. It's not just my story anymore. It's a community. Thousands of women and men sharing their experiences, supporting each other, warning each other. We've created a database of known scammers, photos, names, tactics, locations. When someone posts a suspicion, others jump in, verify details, share similar experiences. We've prevented hundreds of scams, maybe thousands. Every week someone messages me saying they recognize the signs, that they didn't send the money, that they walked away, that they're grateful. I've been asked if I regret going to Rome, if I wish I'd never met Marco. The answer is complicated. Yes, I regret trusting him. I regret giving him access to my phone. I regret transferring that money. I regret not listening to the small voice in my head that said something was off. But I don't regret going to Rome. I don't regret trying to start over. I don't regret wanting connection. Those weren't mistakes. Those were human needs. Marco exploited them. That's on him, not on me. I talk to Emma regularly now, more than I did before. She knows everything. She's read the blog. She's heard me speak at events. She tells her friends about it, warns them. She says she's proud of me. That means more than I can explain. My relationship with Sophie is stronger too. She was there when everything fell apart. She wired me money when I was stranded. She sat with me when I couldn't speak. She's family. real family, the kind you choose. I still think about the money sometimes. $29,000. What I could have done with it, the security it would have provided, the freedom. But I also think about what I gained, not in money, in purpose, in voice, in the ability to help others avoid what I went through, in the community I built, in the lives I've potentially saved from the same devastation. That trade-off doesn't erase the loss, but it gives it meaning, and meaning is powerful. I don't date much. I'm not opposed to it. But I'm not looking either. I'm content alone. I have my work, my blog, my friends, my daughter, my little condo with the ocean view, my morning walks on the beach. My life is mine. Fully mine. No one else gets to define it. No one else gets to take it. I protect it now, fiercely, not out of fear, out of respect. For myself, for what I've survived, for what I've built. If you're watching this and you've been scammed, I want you to know something. It's not your fault. You're not stupid. You're not weak. You're human. You wanted connection. You wanted to feel valued. There's nothing wrong with that. The person who took advantage of those needs is the problem, not you. Don't carry shame that belongs to someone else. Don't hide what happened. Speak up. Report it. Tell someone. Find a community. You're not alone. There are thousands of us, and we're here. If you're planning to travel alone, especially after a divorce or a loss, do it. Don't let my story scare you. Just be smart. Trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. Don't ignore red flags. Don't give anyone access to your phone or your accounts. Don't send money to people you just met. No matter how convincing they are, no matter how special they make you feel, protect yourself. You deserve that. And if you're someone who's thinking about scamming someone, know this. You might get away with it. You might take their money. You might disappear without consequences. But you won't take their voice. You won't take their strength. You won't take their ability to warn others. Your tactics will be exposed. Your patterns will be shared. And every person you scam creates another person like me. Someone who refuses to stay silent. Someone who turns pain into purpose. Someone who makes it harder for you to succeed next time. Thank you for watching. If this story helped you, share it. If you have a similar experience, you're not alone. And if you want to support the work I do helping fraud victims, the link to my nonprofit is in the description. Subscribe to this channel for more stories, real stories, from real people, stories that matter.